We're here with Ron Fournier, longtime reporter for the Associated Press and now senior political columnist for the National Journal. He's covered politics and presidents for years. He's now out with a new book, Love That Boy, that's far more personal. And Ron, you were on the very first presidential trip I ever took with Clinton. And I was working for Time Magazine in the pool, and you were in the same pool van. So, like, the first experience I had with Washington politics, you were there.
Some of our longest days were in those pool vans.
That's right, that's right.
I hope I treated you well.
You treated me very well, as you always do. So, where did this book come from? Was it your conversation with President Bush, or was it later, or where did it come from?
From my wife. My wife, Lori, who I write in here, and I mean it, is the hero of the book. Tyler was diagnosed late with autism. He was 12. And on the way out of the doctor's office, Lori said, "You're going to step up here, buddy, to me. You're going to spend more time with him. You have to spend less time at work and more time with him and get to know him. And you got to get him out in the world, because we just learned that these things that we thought were uncomfortable to him, having conversations, looking people in the eyes, modulating his voice, listening to other people, not fixating on things, we realized were unnatural to him, that he was born this way, but that he could learn to do these things, because he's so smart, and there's a way to help Aspies is what they're called, learn these things." So she said, literally, that happened on the way to the car. Then we get in the car, and she got tears in her eyes, and I start crying. And she says, "What you're literally going to do is go to presidential sites," because Tyler's one of his obsessions, which is a word we had just learned had something to do with autism, was and is history. Loves history, especially presidential history. And Lori says, the presidency is what took you away from our 3 kids, and Tyler's the youngest. So you're going to go to presidential libraries. And so we put together a series of trips to JFK's library and the Quincy Estates and outside of Massachusetts, and in Grand Rapids, my home state, the Ford Library. And Tyler's favorite president is Teddy Roosevelt, so we went to Sagamore Hill just before it closed down for renovation. And just had a great time. I learned a lot about him. He learned how to talk to me and let me know what his condition was like. And I thought I was done. And then she said, "You know what, I appreciate you doing that, but now you got to see if Clinton and Bush will talk to you."
And tell me about your first reaction. So you've got to step up here, and did you say, "Oh, that's great," because you're kind of a busy guy, and you got a lot of stuff going on, and you're on deadline, and the story's chasing and galloping out there.
It's funny, there was a lot going on in life right then. Like you said, I've worked for the AP for a long time and loved the AP, still love the AP. But David Bradley, who owns Atlantic Media here in town, had just reached out and wanted me to run his newsroom. And this literally is happening in the same week. So I knew I needed to change the way I was working already, and I wanted to be more a part of my family's life. But this really brought it home. And with the diagnosis, sitting in the car there with Lori, I would have done anything. I wanted to help him. In a way, the diagnosis struck fear in me. My God, my child has autism. I didn't even know what the hell it was, to be honest with you. But it was kind of a relief. Okay, now there's something I can fight. We're kind of, we have a problem. We go in our business. That's kind of what, I never thought of it. That's what it was. It was an assignment from my wife to get this story done.
Tell me what you said. Tyler taught you how to talk to him, or this dialogue, and tell me about the evolution of that.
Yeah, the way the book is structured, the beginning of every chapter deals with an expectation that all of us parents bring into parenthood, whether your child has special needs or not. And at the beginning of every chapter is one of the road trips that kind of echoes to the theme of the chapter. So you'll see in the book where Tyler he'll do things like at one point I was trying to get him to talk, I think, about why he doesn't have any friends, and does it bother you that you don't have any friends, and that you're not popular, which is something all of us parents want our kids to be popular, right? Until you look at the social science and you realize it's probably not what you want. But I'm asking him, I'm pressing him on it, and he says, "Hey, Dad, did you not read that book I gave you last week?" And it was a book, I'm sure I got the title wrong, but I think it was something to do with freaks and geeks. It's written by a young man who has autism, and he writes an autobiography about what it's like to be autistic. It's a powerful book, and I'm sorry I don't have the name at the tip of my tongue. But in it, the young man says, he's writing to parents, don't force us to have conversations. So I'm pushing Tyler. He says, "Didn't you read that book I gave you last week? Ease off a little bit."
Yeah.
And I wrote in the book, I realized then that he was kind of teaching me. He was kind of, you see it throughout the book where he's kind of putting up boundaries, how far I can go. And he opens up a lot more than he ever had to me, and to President Bush, actually. But he was becoming a young adult over the process here.
A woman who taught me English back in 8th grade, who now actually teaches my kids, has an expression: "Grow the tree you have." with
what
kids.
a great phrase.
Yeah.
Well, what does she mean by that?
Well, what she means is get rid of your expectations and figure out where they are.
Right.
And then wherever they are, help them go down, and grow in the way that they were meant to grow.
I'm going to write that down. What's her name?
Yeah, her name's Sally Selby.
Grow the tree you have.
Yeah.
Well, the tree I thought I had was the tree that I was. I love sports. My dad loved sports. Until he got real sick, he was still kicking my butt in sports. And on his deathbed, we were talking about the Detroit Tigers. I mean, that's how we bonded. It was the field of dreams kind of cliche. So I didn't push Tyler in the sports the way a lot of dads do, where I wanted him to be what I wasn't. It wasn't that dynamic, but it was. I knew no other way to connect with him. I thought he had to be a sports jock tree, or I couldn't connect. And it wasn't until Lori sent me out on this trip that I realized exactly that. I don't have my idealized son, the one I dreamed of, but man, I got the ideal son.
Yeah.
If I just recognize I have this tree that I need to make. That's a great phrase. I wish if I can do an amendment on the book, I'm going to put it in there. Grow the tree you have.
Now let's go from the. I want to talk about what Tyler thought about all of this whole project in a minute. But okay, let's talk about politics for a minute, or presidencies in a minute. So you're now going to 8 different presidential libraries, seeing it all through your son's eyes. Did it come back and change the way you looked at the presidency, politics, that part of your life?
It did a little bit, and I mentioned this on the show. I'm really proud of the job I've done as a journalist. Like you, I think my job is to kind of be a referee and throw the flag wherever the penalty is, whether you rooted for the home team at some point in your life or not. We all of us as citizens should hold our leaders accountable, and I can be really tough on them, especially the last couple of years as a columnist. And I don't take anything back that I've done. But this process has helped me realize that I'm not covering titles. It's easy to take a cheap shot at a senator or a CEO or the preacher or the president. I'm covering human beings. Yeah. And at their very, everyone who gets into our business gets into it for the right reasons. And most of the people we cover are still in it for the right reasons. They might screw up, they might do something that we're very critical of. But President Bush and President Clinton in particular, and President Obama to a lesser degree just because of the way he fits into this book, they did things for my son that they didn't have to do, that they got nothing out of. They weren't getting any favors from me. They knew that, and they're not even running for election again. And even Hillary Clinton wasn't running for election when I met with President Clinton. They do this kind of thing all the time. And what they did for Tyler, you'll see in the book, is amazing. That here's a guy who has a hard time having a conversation with his sister. Has a hard time telling me what's on his head. But he sat down with Bill Clinton, the most, charismatic, conversational person you and I will ever meet. He sat down with George Bush, who can really hold you accountable in a personal conversation. That he's very big in decorum, but Tyler, decorum doesn't come naturally to him. And they gave them each an hour of their time, and I know they're giving a lot of other people still their time. And I want to try to remember that going forward when I'm writing about politics. That these aren't just titles or people.
Finally, what was your son's reaction to the book, to the process?
Typically, and I can never pronounce this word, nonplussed. He's so much into his day that he doesn't really see the big picture. When he read bits of this as it was going along, but then last Christmas when it was finished, he sat down with the whole manuscript. He went off in another room, and he came out and he said, "It's fine. That's well, are you sure about this, buddy? You can veto this anytime you want until it comes out." No, I'm fine with it. And you'll see in the book when I did the magazine piece, he actually had some suggestions that he made me change, and I've changed those. But he said yesterday he's going to do a couple of events. Like he's not going to do any TV, but he's going to do a couple of events, like when the family's going to be there. And we said, people are starting to read this. A lot of people might be recognizing you. And he says, well, I want to be, and it's a typical Tyler phrase, I want to be covertly famous. He likes the attention, and he's very proud of being an Aspen. He likes the fact that he might be helping the cause, but he doesn't want anybody talking to him or making a big deal out of it.
All right, Ron Fournier, thanks so much for sharing this with us.
Thank you for your time, John.
Sure.